Greetings and salutations, friends. Character NPC back at the gaming table. Today, in preparation for Battle 4 of my playthrough of World War II in historical order with my friend, using the Europa series of games. This one, A Winter War. GRD, I think 1992. Not positive about that. There isn't an equivalent GDW game. This is the only one that covers the November 1939 Finland and Soviet battle. I think I mentioned in my last video that my opponent wants to print out updated counters, something closer to Total War, I guess, than a Winter War. So we'll be using the Total War maps and I believe Total War counters. I'm not positive about that. But anyway, since we're not going to be actually using this, and I had it, and it's basically a new set, I thought I would go ahead and open it up and show people what this looks like. I don't really do unboxings or anything, so I hate to call it that, but you end up getting two decent counter sheets. The problem with these, as I said, versus the GDW older sets, is that the back, bit hard to see here, but the paper's just not always cut through. A lot of sheets, if you weren't really careful and cut them out yourself with a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. We used to use X-Acto knives when I was a kid. They're like an angled hobby knife. A lot of these at the top here, they're okay. Looks like they would punch out all these here at the top. But down here, this last two, maybe even 3 rows, but looks definitely 2 rows on each side here. I would have to cut those out, where I wouldn't have to do that if it was the old GDW. I don't think I ever had one that didn't punch out easily from those days. But 2 counter sheets. And then a half counter sheet of the utility counters, I'll call them. Basically, they're forts and, indicators. I don't remember what these are versus resource points and things, but these are for different things getting hit, an airfield getting hit, or some other type of strike. It doesn't have any of the out of supply counters that I would expect to see, so it has everything else I think that's really necessary, but I guess you would be using these instead of the U1, U2, U3, U4, so I don't know. An addendum sheet, and the map has some addendum, but this box has 2 maps as an updated map, and that's part of this addendum. It talks about the, make sure that's in focus there. It talks about the border of Soviet Union and Finland was missing north of Leningrad in the first printing, I guess. Most of this is already taken care of in the second map in this box, but there are a couple of hexes. I think there's one swamp hex that's kind of irrelevant and one wooded rough hex that might be valuable, but that's about it. Everything else was already on the new map. And then it comes with a rule set, not too many pages, 29 pages, 28 pages. Really, that's all you need to know to play Europa. It's not that complex. A Winter War, Order of Battle, and this really has both the Order of Battle for a Winter War, they call it a campaign, but the scenario, that's this box set, but also 4 Europa Orders of Battle for historical scenarios and future Grand Europa. The Finland from 1939 to 1945, and It says Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Order of battle. Here are the victory conditions, and of course it's the Finnish government being captured. Helsinki is Soviet owned at the end of the game. Each Finnish dot city owned by the Soviets. Each Finnish reference city owned at the end of the game. So basically all the cities reference and above. Reference are the circles that aren't filled in. Dot cities are the large dots, and of course great cities, as they call them, are the ones that look like they have streets and hexes, whether it's a complete hex or not. Terror bombing of Helsinki, so lots going on here. Taking the rail element supply lines between the, this hex and this is a factory, I guess. I haven't done my research yet on the history of this, but I believe that there are some significant points that were not just like major buildings, a factory or major buildings, and of course the rail line. I know the rail line was incredibly important. Anyway, yeah, we might have to dig into that a little bit. You also get on the back side of the victory point list, victory conditions, you get this coastal defense chart and things that are for GRD Europa naval, which I think is really, nobody seems to like these older naval rules. And I think the guy mentioned for the Kalk and Gull scenario, Daniel T. Shaw, if you look up his website, when we get to Storm Over Scandinavia and we're actually playing that, I'm almost certain we'll be using the naval rules that Daniel T. Shaw put out. So, over this. The Europa Master Terrain Key, this is great to have. It's Master. Master Sequence of Play Summary. This is where it's really just duplicates, Master Play Summary, unit identification, all these are the same. One for each player. Of course, the gameplay chart where you break down units for each side. 2 dice. They always look like this, kind of a light wood with painted gold pips. I think all the GRD sets had those. And as I mentioned, this box set had both revisions of the maps. I guess you would call this first edition printing or first printing. And you can see here, this is Leningrad, but it didn't include the Soviet border that would be here. So the coloration is kind of light as well. You can clearly see the Soviet border though around the rest, and everything else that needs to be here is here. So if you just took a Sharpie and drew over these 6 hex sides, you would have the border there. So it's really not that big a deal. However, there was an updated version, I'll call it second printing, that this box had. I bought this used, and it had the second printing in it. I don't think it came out very long after the delivery of the first set, but you can always just fill this in. This is the only thing that's missing, other than a few other points that are the addendum for all the maps anyway, right? So not a big deal if you don't have this. You can certainly make it work. This printing is a little bit darker as well, as you can tell. So while a lot of it isn't different, especially in the wooded marshes, intermittent lakes and forest, heavy woods and things, mountains, everything else is generally the same but darker. Helsinki is here, the capital. That's where the Finnish government will be, and generally what this game will be about. Holding back the Soviets from that huge front over there. Here is a look at the bottom of the box. I do like the battle map here. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that. That's pretty cool. But, you know, it's just the back of the box. And like I said, I don't do unboxings, and I'm not a YouTube influencer, so I feel kind of odd showing you the box. But anyway, there it is. So that's about it, friends. I'll leave it here. Of course, I'll be putting out videos as we start to lay out the map that we're going to use for a winter war, and talk more about any changes that need to be done, and maybe even talk about the order of battles in detail. So, yeah, stay tuned for more.